Hello and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski and today I'm talking to the fabulous Sam Belfrage. Sam identifies as a working class academic and we talk about her own story and her journey into her PhD project and also reflect on themes that have come up throughout her life. There is so much wisdom and encouragement here, so I do hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, Sam.
Hi, Emma.
Thank you so much for being here. I was just saying how much I've been looking forward to talking to you. And really, like we always have a little bit of a chat before we start recording, and we were saying that actually the main body of what we're talking about today really is your story. And you kind of reached out and very generously said that you'd be happy to talk about your experiences. And I was just like, oh, yes, please. This would be awesome. So we're going to really talk about coming from a working class background and being in academia.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, so I was just saying before this call started that I feel a bit uncomfortable talking about it, that I have this identity as being a working class academic and that I've come from a working class background, because it's only just something that I've really, really recently connected into and have started saying out loud, because I just, throughout my whole life, like from secondary school, trying to go to college, trying to go to university, I always felt like I didn't fit in, but I couldn't really work out what it was. I didn't really know what it was until I started my PhD in January this year. So I am a really new PhD student. I've contacted you, Emma, to say, I think it would be really great to have an episode on being a working class academic and what that means and what support is out there, because there actually is some really great support. And you were like, okay, like, are you up for that? And I was like, oh, okay.
Yes, don't approach me with these ideas because I'll just ask you to do them.
Yeah, I was like, actually, yes, that would be really great. So I wanted to share that that there's not really a definition for what it means to be a working class academic, but I identify as that, as I grew up in a council house in a city, in relative poverty, and I'm first generation university student. So to me, that's my identity now, which I've always been very embarrassed about. And it's been really quite easy for me to hide it. I've got this accent that's quite generic. It doesn't really pinpoint me to any area. And I've always just kind of been a bit quiet and kept my head down. And I don't think people really noticed where I was from or what my background might be. But I just want to tell you a little bit about that. So at secondary school, I did okay, but I didn't have a family that valued education. It was never the kind of emphasis or expectation wasn't on me to study, to revise, to try. So got through secondary school okay, but, didn't really try, which was, okay for me at that time. So then I thought, okay, well, I'll try going to college. And I went to a college that there were no registers and the emphasis was on you to be responsible for your learning. That didn't go well for me, and I had dropped out by October half term. So that, having responsibility and motivation to learn wasn't with me then. But I had started volunteering, and this is something that has actually, I was just thinking about this. And I was like, actually, that's been a thread throughout my whole life. So I started volunteering when I was 16 at a homeless shelter, and I felt quite like a part of that environment, like being able to volunteer and help others felt quite nice. And I felt like I was young to be volunteering there, but I still felt like I fitted in quite well. But again, my parents and my family weren't particularly supportive of it. They were like, you can do it if you want, it's up to you. But it's, they weren't driving me there or giving me a lift or anything. I was getting the bus and doing it kind of on my own. So yeah, I dropped out of college, carried on volunteering, tried a different college the following year, which was, it had some more rules. It was, you need to be here. We're going to take a register. We're going to check that you're doing some homework. And I was like, okay, this is better for me. But I still left after 2 years without any A levels. So I didn't even try to take any, which is another theme that comes across when I move on to what happened at university. So I did 2 years there, but didn't leave with any A levels. I did well in an AS course in communications studies. I got an A, and the same at school. Like, I'd done really well in photography and food technology. So these more creative, vocational things I'd done okay in, but not necessarily in what you would call academic subjects.
Right.
So then I don't even know where this idea came from, but I had this idea that I wanted to be a dietitian. And I honestly, I don't know where that came from. That was just something that I'd kind of pulled out of the air. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to study nutritional science at university, but it means I need to do an access course. I need to do biology, chemistry, and maths, which I hadn't done particularly well in when I'd passed them at school, but only as the bare minimum. So went on to an access course. And I did quite well in that because it was full of other people who had either tried other careers and were going into an access course, or the same as me, hadn't done very well at school or at college and were trying again. So it was kind of like this, I describe it as a second chance, really. And I really enjoyed that year. But then what happened was I was due to go to a university to study nutritional science, and they pulled it. The summer I was due to go, the university said, we're not running that course. We just don't have enough interest in it. So they'd offered me a couple of alternatives, but I was like, no, it's not really what I want to do. I want to study nutritional science. So I went through clearing, which actually was a good thing in one sense, but I went to a Russell Group university. I got in through clearing. I'm not 100% sure how, because I did not do very well at the interview. I felt very out of my depth, very uncomfortable, and I didn't know anyone else going there. Whereas the other university, a couple of people I'd met on this access course were going to be going to the same university. So I'd started again without knowing anyone, which was the same every time at college. I wasn't going with anyone I knew. And then I was going to start university again, kind of alone, I suppose. And the other thing about that was I felt like I didn't fit in with the 18-year-olds that were there, because I was a few years older, but I also didn't fit in with the mature students who had probably already had careers or tried different jobs and then were coming back to university. So I felt I was in this really weird space where I didn't fit in. And I was there for 3 years. In my first year, I tried my hardest, but having this working class background, I really lost my voice, and I felt like I couldn't ask questions. I couldn't say that I didn't understand. I couldn't say that I was stuck, because then people would know that I wasn't very smart, that I hadn't done well at school. So I just didn't say anything. And that was really, I think, kind of how it all came unraveled for me, really. So, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, because to say that if you're in that situation like I am, or you know someone in your family or a friend or a friend's son or daughter going through that, like, it's so important to just let someone else know that it's difficult for you for whatever reason. There's loads of reasons why it might be difficult for you, but not speaking out at that time. And because I didn't have family support, they weren't, how are you? How's your course going? They had no interest. They didn't think I should be there. They felt I should be working, or like in their eyes doing something more useful with my time and more productive. So without that support, I just went along kind of silently. And so first year tried, passed my exams just about, got into the second year, and I took a job in a homeless hostel. And I felt again that I fitted in with those other people that were working there, that I had such a great time in that job. I would work like 12-hour shifts on a Saturday and another 12 hours on a Sunday, because I felt that I was kind of valued there. I felt like I was giving something, doing something that was worthwhile, and I really enjoyed it. But obviously that didn't help my studies at all, as you can imagine, that I spent all my spare time working and not studying. So there was a module in the second year, again, I just about scraped by. In my third year, I took a module. It was called Teaching Maths, but it was actually, I taught biology in a college. And it was, again, I got my highest grade. I got a distinction on it. And I was like, okay, there's something in this. I'm okay at teaching. I'm okay at being reflective in what I'm doing, but I don't have the confidence or the skills to ask for help. So the other modules I were doing were with lots of people that had been to private school, lots of people that had wanted to study medicine but hadn't got in, so they took a biomedical sciences course. So the kind of expectations and how other students were working and presenting themselves, I just felt like I couldn't even go to them for help. I felt like I couldn't even speak to my peers for support. So very kind of quietly disappeared into my third year that I actually didn't sit my exams. I didn't even go to them.
My goodness.
Yeah, so I felt like I remember waking up on the day and I just thought, I've got nothing to say in these exams. I've got nothing I can answer. I just don't know enough. And still at that point, I didn't reach out to anybody. And I think that's such a shame, because I could have had a very, very different experience if I'd spoken up, or if I'd found somebody that would have supported me. And that's another reason for doing this podcast. Like, if someone's listening to this and thinking, oh, I just need to speak to someone, but I don't know who, like, reaching out to you or reaching out to me on Twitter and helping you find the right people, like, it's totally possible, and there will be people out there that can support you.
Definitely.
Like, I believe that 100%.
Definitely.
So that's kind of how I ended those 3 years. And do you know what? The saddest thing was, I really wanted to graduate. Like, I really, really wanted to have the opportunity to wear that graduation attire and feel like I'd achieved something, but I didn't, and it didn't happen. So
we're on a cliffhanger.
I know. Yeah, what happened?
I want the happy ending. Come on, Sam. What's the happy ending?
So I definitely did not graduate that year. The following year, so that was 2007. The following year, I got a job in the local authority, and I ended up being there for 10 years. It's quite a long story.
Amazing.
So I ended up being in the local authority for 10 years. And the reason I got that job, I was thinking about that. It was the skills I developed from volunteering, and it was the skills I developed from that teaching module. So even though I hadn't, you wouldn't really look back at my university time as successful per se, but actually there are still skills that I was able to take away from it, and the volunteering and the job I'd had in the homeless hostel. Those things had given me enough to get that I would describe as a good job within the local authority. So I feel like I left with all this debt and not much else, but actually it did give me some skills to gain some great employment. And I was there for 10 years. But it does tie into this graduation, because I used to sit at a desk overlooking the Guildhall, and every summer I'd see graduations and I'd have this like feeling of resentment that I hadn't done it yet. And this feeling of, oh, I would love to do that. I would love to graduate. And it kind of feels like it was because I hadn't been able to do it that I wanted it more. It wasn't necessarily the course. It was more like, I want this sense of achievement and completion. But what happened whilst I was within the local authority, they were asking if anybody wanted to study for a master's. And I said, oh, and also I'd kept it very quiet that I didn't have a degree. So everyone knew that I had been to university, but people didn't know that I'd left without a degree. I always left that bit out. So it was, what university did you go to? I'd tell them. What course did you study? Nutritional science. I'd tell them, and then I'd leave the ending out.
Nice.
So so then when they were asking, do you want to do this master's, I was like, oh, I do, but I'm gonna have to tell them that I don't. Like, I hadn't lied on my application. I said I left with a HND, but just general talk around the office, I'd say, this is where I went, this is what I studied. so then I had to be a lot more clearer and say, oh, you know, I actually left without a degree. I don't know if I can study a master's. I don't know if I would be accepted. But because I'd had so much time in employment and my master's is in public health and I'd been working in the public health team, the university agreed to take me on the master's course if I did it one module at a time. Yeah, to see if I was able to study at that level, to see if I was able to work and complete the master's. And it meant that my funding came in one module at a time. So it was perfect. There was no pressure on me then. Because I was also thinking about this. I was thinking, and I spent 5 years doing it. And I was thinking, oh, if I was listening to this and someone's saying you spent 5 years part-time on a master's, that wouldn't resonate with me as something that I would want to do. That sounds like a huge commitment in terms of time. But actually, just doing it one module at a time was really achievable for me. And it meant that I could show what I was capable of in that, to that level, really, to that master's level. And it turns out that I found some really inspiring lecturers, that I really found this passion and this ignition into wanting to help and wanting to do more. And public health does that for me. It's just absolutely was the best possible thing I could have done or have been offered. And I feel very, very lucky that that was offered to me and that the university took me, even though my background isn't really screaming, yes, she's going to achieve well. So that took me 5 years and I did graduate. Yay! So, I mean, I felt so proud, really, really proud. It was, yeah, I felt really good. But also during that time, I'd had a baby and got married in that order. So there was always other things going on for me. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do afterwards, because the job in the local authority, which this might be relevant for people listening as well, like I was always at risk of redundancy. I had really short, like 1 year contracts, or we're restructuring again, you're going to have a slightly different job title, or we're merging with another department, you're going to change roles again. And that happened the whole time I was there for those 10 years, that I thought, okay, I want to do something else. And I'd spoken to somebody who had set up this wonderful project. She was a teacher and had a PhD, and she set up this project called Life Lab. And it's about inspiring secondary school children into medicine and into science. And I met her and I found her so inspiring. And she was like, yeah, I did my PhD, then I became a teacher. And this is how I've kind of worked the two together into this. I think it's an absolutely amazing project. And I was like, okay, so maybe having a teaching qualification is for me. So I left the local authority after those 10 years and did a PGCE in secondary science, which it's kind of an unusual route, I suppose. And that was one of the other things that I wanted to speak about for this course. So because I had the master's, but I still didn't have a degree, I'd looked at some PhD programs and it was still like maybe I wouldn't get in, or if there was some funding for it, it looked like you had to have a distinction in your master's and I had a merit. So I was still thinking I'm not quite the candidate that they're looking for a PhD yet. So I left and did a PGCE in secondary science in some really difficult schools, actually. I was placed in two very challenging inner city schools, but I liked that. And I think my background served me well for that. Right. Which was a challenging year because I had a 2-year-old and it's full time. And I've still got this doubt about my ability, but I did it, graduated again, and then it's such a funny story. So then I left and I was like, okay, am I going to teach? What am I going to do? I don't really know, but I felt like I didn't want to take a full-time teaching role with my young child when I'd been doing the training full-time for a year, and looking for part-time teaching work is actually really difficult. So I took a 0-hour contract with a alternative provision, so a school that focused on children with social and emotional and mental health challenges, which was okay for me in my situation. But again, if you're like, I was okay at that point. Like, I was married and my husband could financially support me. But again, if you're from a working class background and family, like, that option often isn't there for you. And the same with the PhD, that if you're not funded, it's near enough impossible to be able to start that journey. So I was really lucky that I was able to take this contract. But then COVID hit, and I had no work. I had nothing, because the school, a lot of the teaching was in the pupils' homes, home tutoring at all very, very small class sizes. So that I wasn't needed on this 0-hour contract. I'm one of a pool of teachers, and we just weren't needed. So that was a really difficult time, but it led me to my PhD, a kind of long-winded way to how I ended up there. So I saw a PhD advertised in the January, and through the website, find a PhD, which when people say to me, like, where did you see it advertised? I'm like, there actually is a website called Find a PhD. And it was advertised and it had funding attached to it. But again, I was thinking, I didn't get a distinction at my master's. I don't have a degree. I've jumped from one thing to the next. Are they really going to think I'm suitable for this? But I had 4 weeks to get my application in. And the project is about health literacy, and it's about supporting parents, socially disadvantaged parents, to improve their health literacy, to manage minor common childhood illnesses. So it's about empowering people, upskilling people. And I was like, with my the public health background and that desire to help and make a difference, the sound of the PhD was just, it's just so right for me, I felt. So I put the application in, couldn't believe I got an interview. Like, honestly, could not believe that they were going to interview me. And I've never felt so sick before something, because I think, because I was in a situation now, I did take another job. I just took a part-time job to kind of get some money in. So I wasn't doing something I was particularly passionate about. I really wanted this PhD so much, to have this opportunity to contribute. But so I got the interview, and then I said to my husband, no, it was awful. Like, my words were trembling. I was so nervous. I felt out of my depth. I felt really uncomfortable. And then they phoned me up the same day to say I'd got it. And I said to my husband, I was like, I must have been the only person they interviewed. There must have been a typo. They must have, the other people didn't get their emails. Like, what's happened? And again, from speaking to other people in this association of working class academics group that I'm a part of, this idea that you were just lucky, or this idea that you don't deserve to be there, is really, really common. And it's something that so many other people could relate to. So I took the PhD, and I started. And I mentioned earlier that I started in January, so there were no other PhD students starting in January. So I've started again on my own as this person, without any connections, without any friends, without any support. And again, my parents are like, what are you doing? Why are you going back to university? Why are you wasting all this time? What are you actually doing? And I have to leave that to one side, because to me, what I'm doing is really important. But I also can't be needing their validation of it. I need to just be able to let that go. So definitely for other people that are maybe in that situation where maybe others around them don't see the value in education, or being a female, or whatever it is that people are a bit like, that's not really what you should be doing, or what you're meant to be doing, I would say that's fine. That's their opinion, but you just need to follow what's important for you and find those things that inspire you.
Love it. I love it.
So sorry, Emma.
Well, I was just going to say, there's so much in there and in that story, and this sense of these themes that come through, and it really reminds me of interview that I did with Valerie Young, who talks about imposter syndrome and talks really eloquently. I'm just going to say how amazing her book is again. But this sense of, because right from the beginning when you said, I got a distinction, but I didn't think I was good enough. She talks about how people, even when the evidence is there, when they've called you for the interview, when they've given you a distinction, you're still like, actually, I'm not good enough. And these internal voices, we are our own best saboteurs, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, we are the people who know the buttons to press on ourselves. And actually, the importance of making friends with yourself, finding that passion, and finding your people, that's been a theme that's come for you, and kind of keep going forward. So tell us about your people. Tell us about those people that have been supporting you.
My people came to me very unexpectedly because I didn't know there was a group of people I was going to connect with. I received this email from a student rep in my faculty just saying that there's going to be a talk on working class academics, and it was open to everybody. And I didn't really know. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I think this, this could be relevant to me. I don't really know what it is. So I went along, and it's actually international. So there were people from all over the globe there. And the first meeting that I went to, they were talking about microaggressions. And so the group are called the Association of Working Class Academics.
Brilliant.
You'll find them on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll
absolutely. And they meet I think it's every couple of months at the moment. Every kind of 2 to 3 months, there'll be an online meeting, which is another really good thing, actually. I was thinking that about COVID times and having these resources online. Actually, it's amazing because it puts me in contact with people, not only all over this country, but internationally, to say, actually, this is how I feel. This is what it's been like for me. So they were talking about microaggressions and things people might face from their accents, or how they dress, or those things about where you studied or what grades you've got, and all those things. And it was just so nice to hear from other people say, that's my experience too. And the same about the parents and families not valuing education. There was quite a few other people. Some families were really supportive of it, but there was quite a number of people who had a very similar experience to me. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, it's a sigh of relief and a weight off my shoulders that I'm not the only person trying to wade through this PhD with this feeling that I don't fit in, that I don't really, it's really a feeling that I don't deserve to be there. But now I found this group with a really similar experience. I'm like, oh, okay, this has given me a new lease of life to face this. Yeah, it's been, I couldn't believe it, really.
And there's been some really interesting research about role models and how, and I'm going to do it great disservice because I can't remember exact details of it, but this sense of having, when there was a picture of on the wall of someone who kind of the person who was speaking could relate to, they spoke because they gave people the task of speaking on a particular topic to a group of people, and when there was somebody on the wall that they could relate to, picture there, people spoke with more confidence. They delivered, they took their time, they didn't hurry, they answered questions more confidently. So I think we can't underestimate that. And I think what I love, and what I was saying to you, what I love about you sort of stepping up and speaking today, is that role model then for other people. If other people are listening today and going, do you know what, actually I don't feel like I've got the cultural capital, as Bourdieu would say, to be doing this. It's like that. Actually, there's other things in the mix. It isn't just about cultural capital. There are other things in the mix there. And I certainly feel that as someone who was first generation going away to college. And I think it is really, really important. And this association there to support people, how amazing is that?
Yes. I couldn't believe, when people were speaking, I got goosebumps. I was like, I cannot believe, I really genuinely believed I was the only person that felt like that, which is so ridiculous and caught up in my own little world. And I'd only been there a couple of months.
Exactly. And I think, our psyches are really powerful, and those internal voices are really powerful because we listen to them all day. and because they know us so well, so they know the things to say to us.
Yes.
And so absolutely, this sense of kind of isolation can be really paralyzing. And actually, you, as you said really eloquently throughout what you were talking about in terms of reaching out, making contact, that is a really powerful way to support yourself and to turn the volume down on those voices.
Yeah, definitely. I just thought of something that had happened. So in terms of being someone as well that's come from having a career or another job and then coming into studying for a PhD, I had this weird transition around, like how do I claim money to go for a conference, or how do I take leave? And I couldn't even ask my supervisor. It's taken me like 4.5 months to ask what I do about taking some leave. I just couldn't get myself to. I've done it now, but it took me so long to say, what do I need to do? What's the process for that? What do I need to do? Because I'm so used to it, it's not something I would have to speak about. It would just be HR, this is what the process is, this is what you do. But actually having to say to somebody, how do I take a break from this? How do I stop, and how do I check I'm okay? I felt really uncomfortable doing that. But I thought that was another thing that I'd want to say to other people. Any questions, just ask them, which is what I wish I'd done as an undergraduate. And I'm not going to let the same mistakes ruin this opportunity for me.
I love it. I love that statement. And I think that sense of, it's what we talk about a lot here in terms of being in the driving seat of a PhD. It's really, really important. And if you need a lot of what the people called I'm not good on my motoring metaphors, but the people who kind of come in and do amazing things on your car to make them go, when you're a rally driver and they do the things. Like if you need a lot of people in your pit stop, you need a lot of people. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you. And
I totally agree.
Turbocharge yourself.
Yes.
So Sam, I'm gonna ask the question now about the top tip.
Yes.
What top tip would you give? You've given so much brilliant advice here, but what top tip would you give for people?
I think my top tip at the moment, which I hadn't noticed was kind of missing, but one of the things that I loved so much about the master's course was the inspiring lecturers that I heard talk about their own projects and their own research. And I'm finding that through my PhD, I'm not having obviously, and in this time of COVID where I'm working at home on my own, I'm not really having much contact with people that I'm like, wow, your work is inspiring me. It's motivating me. So I say to people, if you feel a little bit stuck in your everyday, just to remind yourself what inspires you and what keeps you driven, because to me, it was feeling like, oh my God, that's stepping away from your project. You shouldn't spend any time away from your piece of research from health literacy. Stop looking at this other work that's going on in other countries. But actually, I need that motivation. I need to see what other work is going on out there in the world. And I need to feel, just inspired, I think. So don't stop kind of fueling yourself with that motivation and inspiration in whatever way works for you.
Love that so much. Sam, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your generosity of spirit and kind of just opening up and letting us take that journey with you. And good luck with it all. You don't need luck, actually. You don't need luck because you've got your people, you've got your passion. You are all over this. So I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Sam in the near future.
Thank you so much, Emma. It's been wonderful.
And thank you all for listening too. And don't forget to sign up to the newsletter too, because we always put some extra stuff in. And I really want to kind of go into a little bit more depth around some of these issues. So don't forget to sign up on the website. Thank you all. Thank you, Sam. And take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.